Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to use one of the backgrounds that I created when I was testing my Betterpress when I first got it. I was testing it with a bunch of different inks and papers. Here's a clip from that video, and I'll link to the rest of the video at the end of this, as well as putting a link to it in the description, in case you're wondering some of the different papers and inks that you can use with your Betterpress letterpress system. So I've got the plate that comes with the Betterpress, and I'm using Hero Art's Pigment white ink, and I'm using it on some mixed media black Heavystock. So this paper, if you've never used it before, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's got like a suede-like feel, and it's so luxurious feeling. I inked up the plate with the Pigment ink. I taped my paper to the platen and then attached the two and put them through my Big Shot machine. Now, because I'm using Pigment ink, I'm going to take some clear embossing powder, and it will stick to that ink, and I will emboss it. This is going to give that image a nice glossy finish, and it's just going to heat set that Pigment ink. If you didn't want it to have the glossy finish, you could just take your heat tool and you could heat set the ink on its own. But I knew I wanted to try something with this, and I wanted to be able to have that glossy finish to it. I thought it would look really, really pretty. So I'm taking some Perfect Pearls here, and I'm just using the plain pearl colored Perfect Pearls, and I'm going to watercolor this image. Because I'm using the mixed media Heavystock, it can handle the water, and I want to keep this card very monochromatic looking, as you can see by the sample at the beginning. But if you wanted it to have more color, you could absolutely use one of the colors of Perfect Pearls. They come in so many different colors, or you could watercolor it with many other different watercolor mediums. I really love the subtle pearlescent finish that you get when you're working with Perfect Pearls. And you can see I go to my towel and wipe my brush off frequently. And that's because it's too easy if I just used just the brush and the Perfect Pearls to get basically one shade of it. So I'm taking some of those Perfect Pearls off of my brush and then brushing it on the paper to remove some of it so that I get some light and dark areas. I want to try to have some light and dark. I want to have some highlights and shadows, even though I'm using a monochromatic color scheme and watercoloring. And even though I'm loving this monochromatic color scheme, I think this would look absolutely beautiful in so many different color variations. I really love this image, and I think it lends itself to so many different techniques and color schemes. Now, if you've never used Perfect Pearls before, there's many different ways that you can use it. It's a mica powder that has a binding agent mixed right into it, and that binding agent is activated by water. So by watercoloring with it, I know that once this is all dry, it's not going to rub off. You can rub this image after it's completely done, and you're not going to have mica powder coming off on your fingers. And that's why I chose to use this. You could also use metallic watercolors or even non-metallic. If you didn't want to have metallic or a pearlescent finish, you don't have to. And once this is completely watercolored, I'm going to let it dry for a few minutes. It doesn't take very long to dry because I'm really not using a ton of water with it. I'm mixing the color in the lid of the Perfect Pearls pot, so I will want to make sure that that dries completely before I close my pot. I don't want to have any water dripping into my pot and getting clumps in there. While that is drying, I'm going to take my Betterpress and I'm going to use this butterfly swirl plate, but I'm going to try it on this glitter alcohol ink cardstock. Now, it's not actually a textured glitter, it's a printed glitter, which baffles my mind, but I'm going to tape it to the platen just like I did at the beginning, and I'm going to use the Betterpress ink with that plate. Now, that Betterpress ink is like archival ink, so it's a permanent ink, so I know that as long as I let it dry for a few minutes on my glitter cardstock, it's going to dry permanent, and I'm not going to have issues with it blending or bleeding or smearing when I'm touching it. So once I have that inked, I put the chase and platen together, and then once again put it through my Big Shot machine for that pressure to get that ink to transfer to the paper. And the nice thing about this Betterpress plate is it has a coordinating die set with it. So I can die cut those pieces out and create a lot of embellishments at once. Now, I'm only going to use one butterfly for this particular project, but I'll have all of these other ones that I can use for future projects. Now, because I'm going for a monochromatic color scheme, I left the glitter cardstock the color it is, but you could, if you wanted to have colored butterflies, use alcohol ink on this before time, and then you could have some colored butterfly embellishments. It would work exactly the same with your Betterpress system, but you would have colored butterflies at the end. The only thing is you can't control exactly which butterfly is colored where, but that's okay. For this, I'm just leaving them as is, and I'm going to put the excess ones aside to use for future projects. Hard part is picking out exactly which butterfly I want to use for this particular project. This glitter cardstock die cuts beautifully, so these butterflies just pop right out. Now, I'm just picking which one I want to use, and I like to bend the wings so that they pop up a little bit just to give the project a little bit of dimension. I'm going to take my trimmer and I'm going to cut this piece down. It was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just cutting it down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 so that when I put it on a white card base, I have a little bit of a frame around it. This also would have been really nice with an extra mat of that glitter cardstock just to tie that all in, but it's not absolutely necessary. Once I put my Distress Collage medium on there, I'm going to glue it to the card base, and I'm going to put an acrylic block on there to free up my hands to work on other things while that dries. Once that is dried, I'm just taking some crystal or silver lining Nouveau drops, just putting a little tiny bit in the center of the flowers. And then I decided that I wanted that butterfly right in the center of one of the flowers, so I'm going to use those Nouveau drops to actually just glue that in. I use the Distress Collage medium to glue my bases together because I like the fact that it dries completely matte and completely clear. So if perhaps something might seep out, you won't see it. So that is the finished card. It's very simple and I think it's very elegant, and I love how it turned out. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic day.